I was standing at the altar when a stranger accused me of cheating, and my fiancé called off the wedding. I never thought the worst day of my life would happen in front of 120 guests, a minister, and a string quartet. I, 35 female, was standing at the altar, bouquet trembling in my hands, staring at my fiancé Mark, 36 male. We'd been together for 5 years. No cheating, no breaks, no, it's complicated. I truly believed we were solid. The minister had just asked if anyone had reason these two should not be joined in holy matrimony when a woman's voice cut through the chapel. Stop. Everyone turned. A woman I had never seen before was standing near the back pew. Late 30s, sharp posture, eyes locked on Mark. She looked furious and confident. She walked forward without waiting for permission and said, "Mark, I can't let you do this. She's cheating on you. And I have proof." The room erupted in whispers. My ears rang. I laughed, actually laughed, because it was so absurd. Mark froze. The woman introduced herself as Claire, an old friend of Mark's. He hadn't mentioned her once in all our years together. She pulled out her phone and said, "I found out recently. I didn't want to believe it, but I couldn't let you marry her without knowing." Then she held up her phone and showed Mark a photo. I could see it from where I stood. It was a woman from behind, with a man who had his hand on the small of her back. She had red hair, like me. Same length, same general height, same build. The implication was obvious. But it wasn't me. I knew it instantly. The hair shade was wrong, too copper, not auburn. There was a tattoo on her shoulder and I don't have tattoos. The car wasn't mine. The shoes weren't mine. Even the posture wasn't mine. I said all of this. Calmly at first, then louder as people started staring at me like I was already guilty. "That's not me," I said. "I don't own that car. I've never been there. Look at the shoulder." Claire cut me off. "Of course you'd say that. How do we know that's not a temporary tattoo?" I turned to Mark, expecting him to defend me. To know me. Instead, he stared at the photo like it was a verdict and started to walk away. I followed him, my dress brushing the aisle. "Mark. Look at me. You know me. You know I wouldn't do this." He didn't meet my eyes. He swallowed, turned back to the crowd and said, "Sorry, I can't do this." The minister walked towards us. "Son, perhaps we should step aside and discuss." "No," Mark said. His voice shook, but he was loud enough for everyone to hear. "If there's even a chance this is true, I can't marry her today. Today. Like there would be another day." I felt my face burn. People were staring openly now, my parents, his parents, friends, coworkers. Someone whispered, "Oh my God." I tried one last time. "Mark, please. Let's talk privately. I can prove this isn't me." He finally looked at me then. Not with anger. Not even sadness. With doubt. "I'm sorry," he said. "I'm calling off the ceremony." Just like that. No discussion. No pause. No faith in me at all. The minister quietly stepped back. The music stopped. The silence was unbearable. I stood there in my wedding dress while Mark walked away with Claire, with her, to a talk. Guests avoided my eyes. A few hugged me. Most didn't know what to do. I walked back down the aisle alone. Later, I demanded the photo. I zoomed in. Anyone who knew me could tell it wasn't me. But it didn't matter. Mark said that damage was done. That he'd always wonder. That it was too much to start a marriage with uncertainty. So instead of becoming a wife, I became the woman whose wedding was stopped because a stranger said I cheated, with a blurry photo and a fiancé who didn't trust me enough to ask questions. I lost my partner, my dignity, and my wedding in under 5 minutes. And the worst part? Everyone remembers the accusation. Not the truth. In the days after the ceremony that wasn't, the backlash rolled in fast and brutal. Friends I'd known for years went silent, or worse, reached out just to talk, which really meant fishing for a confession that didn't exist. Some were subtle. "I just wish you'd be honest so we can move forward. People don't usually make accusations like that for no reason." Others weren't. "If you cheated, you should have just owned it. You embarrassed Mark. What did you expect him to do? Distant relatives I hadn't spoken to in years suddenly had opinions. My aunt messaged me a Bible verse about confession. A cousin told me I'd dodged accountability, not a bullet. Someone actually asked if the red hair in the photo was from before or after I met Mark. I stopped answering most messages. The only people who never wavered, never even hesitated, were my parents. My mom was furious in a quiet, terrifying way. The kind where her voice goes calm and her sentences get sharp. My dad, who isn't very emotional, kept saying the same thing over and over. Anyone who truly knows you knows this is a lie. And he was right. Anyone who actually knew me should have known better. I have always been outspoken about cheating. Not in a preachy way, but in a firm, unmovable way. I've said for years that cheating isn't a mistake, it's a choice. I've walked away from friendships over it. I've refused to stay neutral when people tried to justify it. My close friends knew this. Or at least, I thought they did. What makes this hurt even more is that this wasn't just some abstract belief for me. Years before Mark, I was engaged to someone else. That engagement ended because he sat me down one night and told me he wanted an open marriage. I remember exactly what I said to him. I told him marriage was a blessing from God. That it was a sacred covenant between two people, not a flexible arrangement based on convenience or desire. I told him I took that seriously, and if he didn't, then we weren't compatible. He tried to laugh it off. Said I was bold-fashioned. Said love didn't have to be so rigid. I ended the engagement. And then, shortly after, I found out the truth, he'd already been cheating on me. The open marriage wasn't a philosophy, it was a cover. That experience broke my heart, but it also cemented my values. My friends were there for that. They watched me cancel vendors, return a ring, cry on couches. They knew exactly why I walked away. Which is why their doubt now hurts more than Mark calling off the wedding. Because this isn't about a stranger's accusation anymore. It's about people who knew my character choosing a blurry photo over years of evidence. Some friends have distanced themselves until things calm down. Some told me they're staying neutral. One said, I just can't imagine someone making that up. But I can imagine someone not trusting me. Because they already proved they don't. Mark hasn't apologized. Not really. He sent one message saying he was overwhelmed and did what he thought was right at the time. He still hasn't acknowledged that he humiliated me publicly or that he never once asked me for proof before walking away. So here I am. No husband. No wedding photos. A reputation I never earned. And a much smaller circle than I thought I had. But I still have my parents. I still have my faith. And I still have my integrity. If nothing else, this experience showed me who believed in me and who only believed of me. And I won't forget that. About 3 weeks after the wedding fallout, the rumors reached my workplace. At first it was whispers, coworkers going quiet when I walked into the break room, conversations stopping mid-sentence. Someone asked me, awkwardly, if I was doing okay after everything. No one ever said the word cheating, but it hung in the air like smoke. Then my boss called me into his office. He wouldn't look me in the eye. He cleared his throat and said the company was restructuring and that my position was being eliminated effective immediately. No warning. No performance review. No transition period. I had just received a positive evaluation a month earlier. I asked if there was anything I could do. He said no. I asked if this had anything to do with the rumors. He stiffened and said, this isn't personal. It was personal. I found out later, from a former coworker who felt guilty, that my boss was an old golf buddy of Mark's father. Apparently, Mark's dad had called in a favor for old time's sake. So just like that, I lost my job too. I walked out carrying a cardboard box with my name still taped to it, feeling like my entire life was being erased piece by piece. Without an income, I couldn't keep my apartment. I broke the lease and moved back in with my parents at an age I never thought I'd be unpacking my things into my childhood bedroom again, still in a wedding dress garment bag I couldn't bring myself to open. That's when the depression really hit. I slept constantly. Not because I was tired, but because being awake hurt. Some days I stayed in bed until the sun went down, only getting up when my mom gently knocked and asked if I'd eaten anything. I stopped answering texts. I stopped applying for jobs. I stopped caring. The hardest loss, though, was church. Church had always been my refuge. The place where I felt grounded, known, safe. But the rumor mill reached there too, passed through prayer chains and concerned conversations. I could feel the judgment the moment I walked in. Side glances. Tight smiles. People who used to hug me now offering polite nods instead. One woman asked if I wanted prayer for repentance and healing. I left halfway through the service and cried in my car until my chest hurt. After that, I stopped going altogether. I couldn't worship in peace while feeling like I was on trial. I couldn't sit in a pew wondering who believed the worst about me. I still prayed at home, still clung to my faith quietly, but the community I loved had become another place I didn't belong. So here I am now. Back in my childhood room. Unemployed. Isolated. Mourning a life I didn't just lose, but had taken from me. All because someone told a lie. And because powerful people decided that protecting their own mattered more than the truth. I don't know how to rebuild from this yet. I just know that everything I trusted as love, community, reputation, stability, was stripped away one phone call, one photo, one favor at a time. And I'm so tired. I didn't find out the truth because someone finally did the right thing. I found out because the people who lied got careless. About 3 months after the wedding was called off, my phone started blowing up. Messages from people who hadn't spoken to me since the altar. Some apologetic. Some frantic. Have you seen Claire's Facebook? Please tell me this isn't what it looks like. I hadn't. I didn't want to. My mom came into my room with her phone and said, "You need to see this now." Claire, the woman who interrupted my wedding, had posted a series of Facebook stories late the night before. They were emotional, rambling, and clearly written by someone who hadn't slept. The first story said, "I carried this guilt for months thinking I did the right thing." The next, "Mark didn't want to go through with the wedding, and I thought I was helping." That's when people started asking questions in the comments. And that's when Claire made the mistake that exposed everything. She posted screenshots of text messages between her and Mark, claiming they showed how manipulative he had been. What they actually showed was premeditation. The earliest message was from 3 weeks before the wedding. Claire to Mark. "You don't have to marry her if you're this unsure." Mark. "I can't be the one to cancel. My family would never forgive me." Another exchange, 2 days later. Claire. "I know someone who looks like her. Same height, red hair. From behind, it'll create enough doubt." Mark. "That's not actually her though." Claire. "It doesn't have to be. People will believe what they're shown." And then the message that made everything clear. Mark. "If you do this, it has to end the wedding. Not is this wrong. Not don't do this. Just conditions." He knew before I walked down the aisle that the photo wasn't me. He knew the interruption was coming. He knew I would be humiliated in front of everyone we loved. And he let it happen anyway. More messages followed. Claire reassuring him that she would take responsibility. Mark worrying about how bad this will look. Claire saying that once there was public doubt, you won't have to explain anything. When people realized what they were reading, the story exploded. Screen recordings spread before Claire could delete anything. Friends who had defended Mark went silent. Some deleted their comments from months earlier accusing me of lying. Mark finally tried to contact me. He called. I didn't answer. He texted, saying Claire had gone too far, and that he never expected her to actually interrupt the ceremony. The screenshots contradicted him. He had approved the plan. He had agreed to the outcome. He wasn't tricked. He chose an exit that destroyed me so he wouldn't look like the villain. That realization hurt more than the accusation ever did. Because it meant the man I loved didn't just doubt me, he sacrificed my reputation, my job, my community, and my faith's refuge to avoid being uncomfortable. After the truth came out, apologies poured in. People said they felt sick reading the messages. Some said they should have known better. Some said nothing at all. The truth didn't come out in time to save my wedding. It didn't come out before I lost everything. But it came out clearly. And now, for the first time since that day at the altar, no one is confused about what happened. I didn't cheat. I was sacrificed for someone else's cowardice. And I'm still rebuilding, but at least I'm doing it with my name intact. Once the truth came out publicly, something in me shifted. For months, I had been defending myself to people who had already decided who I was. Explaining. Clarifying. Proving. Begging to be believed. I was exhausted. So instead, I started documenting. I downloaded everything. Every screenshot of Claire's Facebook stories before they disappeared. Every saved screen recording people had sent me. Every text message between Claire and Mark that clearly showed premeditation and consent. Every message Mark sent after the fact trying to rewrite the narrative. Every apology that quietly admitted, I should have trusted you. The text message from the former coworker, I need you to know this wasn't restructuring. Your role wasn't eliminated. They reassigned your workload the next week. Your boss got a personal call the morning you were fired. He was visibly shaken after. He said something like, I owe him for that one. Then the one that mattered most. Everyone knows he and Mark's dad golfed together. Same country club. He bragged about it all the time. I knew, legally, that this was hearsay. Texts from a coworker weren't proof on their own. But they didn't have to be. They just had to be enough to raise questions a judge would take seriously. So I did the hardest thing I'd done yet. I hired an attorney. I laid everything out on the table. Not emotionally, chronologically. My lawyer didn't interrupt. Didn't react. Just took notes. When I finished, she looked at me and said, this isn't about hurt feelings. This is about coordination. She explained it simply. Claire knowingly made false statements presented as fact. Mark knew they were false and allowed them to be presented publicly. Mark's father used his influence to cause tangible harm. My reputation, employment, housing, and community standing were all affected. That's defamation. As for my job, the coworkers' texts couldn't be entered as evidence on their own, but they were enough to justify discovery. Enough to subpoena my boss's phone records. Internal company emails. Text messages between my boss and Mark's father. HR communications around my termination. Records showing my position was never truly eliminated. Once discovery opens, people stop speculating and start producing. We filed a defamation lawsuit against Claire, Mark, and Mark's father. A wrongful termination lawsuit against my former employer. When Mark was served, he started blowing up my phone. I never answered any of his calls. But the voicemails went from apologetic to losing it. I'm so sorry. We can work this out. Please don't ruin my reputation. I really did love you. I just panicked. You're crazy. You're overreacting. Pick up your damn phone. I didn't answer. I recorded every voicemail and sent the recordings to my attorney. When his father was served, my attorney received a request for an informal resolution. We declined. When the company was served, the evidence was so damning, they settled out of court. I got a settlement of $950,000. I nearly choked on my drink as I read the email. The defamation trial is still ongoing. I don't know how this will end yet. Lawsuits are slow. Painfully slow. And messy. But here's what I do know. For the first time since I stood at that altar, I'm not asking anyone to believe me. I'm letting the evidence speak. And this time, the truth isn't relying on trust. It's backed by timestamps, metadata, phone records, and sworn testimony. Whatever happens next, they won't be able to bury this. Not quietly. Not conveniently. And not at my expense again. The trial didn't feel dramatic at first. There was no swelling music. No gasps. Just fluorescent lights, wooden benches, and the quiet weight of everything I'd lost sitting on my chest. Claire sat at the defendant's table first, shoulders tight, eyes darting. Mark sat a few seats away from her, not next to me, not anywhere near me. His father sat behind him, arms crossed, jaw clenched like this was an inconvenience instead of the consequences of his choices. When the judge entered, the room stood. When we sat, everything became very real. Opening statements. My attorney went first. She didn't dramatize. She laid out a timeline. She explained that this case wasn't about heartbreak or a failed relationship. It was about a coordinated lie, knowingly presented as fact, that caused measurable harm, reputational, professional, financial, and emotional. She walked the judge through the pre-wedding text messages, The staged photo. The public interruption. The rapid spread of false accusations. The employment termination that followed. Then she said something that made my throat tighten. The truth didn't just come out eventually. It was buried until digital evidence forced it to surface. The defense tried to frame it differently. Claire's attorney said she was acting out of concern. Mark's attorney said he was confused and emotionally overwhelmed. Mark's father's attorney said he never directed anyone to take action. All of them insisted there was no coordination. That lasted about an hour. Evidence phase. The screenshots were entered first. Not cropped. Not summarized. Full threads. With timestamps. Claire's texts proposing the staged photo. Mark acknowledging it wasn't me. Mark agreeing that the wedding should end publicly. The judge leaned forward when my attorney read this line aloud. Mark, if you do this, it has to end the wedding. Because that sentence erased confusion. Next came the Facebook stories, preserved through screen recordings, authenticated by multiple witnesses who testified they viewed them before deletion. Claire's confession wasn't emotional anymore. It was evidence. Mark testified first. He tried to sound calm. Reasonable. He said he felt pressured and panicked. Then my attorney asked a simple question. Did you know, before the wedding, that the woman in the photo was not the plaintiff? There was a pause. Yes. The room went quiet. Did you allow the interruption anyway? Another pause. Yes. Did you ever correct the accusation publicly? No. That was it. No yelling. No breakdown. Just admissions. Claire was next on the stand. Claire cried. She said she thought she was helping. That Mark had leaned on her emotionally. That she didn't expect the fallout to be that severe. My attorney asked, did you know the accusation was false? Claire whispered, yes. That was the moment I finally stopped shaking. My former coworker testified, not about what they thought, but about what they heard. They testified that my boss received a personal phone call the morning I was fired. That immediately afterward, he said, I owe him for that. That my workload was redistributed, not eliminated. Then came the subpoenaed records. Emails showing no restructuring plan. HR documents confirming my role still existed. Phone logs showing a call between my boss and Mark's father that morning. The most damning comment in that conversation was when Mark's father told my boss, she hurt my son. Get rid of the bitch. If you value our friendship at all, you will do this for me. The judge nor the jury hid their reactions. Closing arguments. The defense argued intent didn't matter. My attorney responded. Intent is exactly what this case is about. These defendants didn't stumble into a lie. They walked into it together. She didn't look at them when she finished. She looked at the judge. The judge didn't rule immediately. They recessed. I waited in silence, holding my mom's hand like I was 12 again. When the judge returned, they spoke plainly. They ruled that the statements made about me were false. The defendants knew they were false. The statements caused direct, foreseeable harm. My termination was improperly influenced. Liability was established. Damages would be determined next. I didn't cry. I didn't smile. I just breathed, for the first time in a very long time. Because the truth hadn't just come out. It had been entered into the record. And no one could erase it ever again. The settlement was as follows. Claire was ordered to pay $350,000. Claire bore significant responsibility because she knowingly made false statements. Publicly accused OP of infidelity. Staged and presented fabricated evidence. Amplified the lie on social media. All of which caused documented harm to my reputation and my job. However, her attorney argued successfully, to a degree, that she did not have financial power. She was not the primary beneficiary. She was influenced by Mark. Her settlement included a six-figure payment funded partially through liquidation of assets. A legally binding written retraction. A permanent injunction prohibiting her from speaking about me publicly again. She also had to post a court-approved apology on the same platform where she posted the accusations. The court ordered Mark to pay $1.2 million. Mark's liability was greater because he knew the accusation was false before the wedding. He consented to the public interruption. He allowed the lie to stand without correction. He benefited directly by avoiding the marriage. His silence enabled professional and social harm. The court took particular issue with his decision to allow a known falsehood to be presented as fact in a public forum. His settlement included monetary damages, a sworn affidavit admitting prior knowledge of the falsehood, agreement not to contest OP's narrative publicly or privately, responsibility for a portion of my legal fees. This affidavit became part of the public record. And finally, Mark's father was demanded to pay $900,000. Mark's father was not part of the wedding accusation, but his role caused economic harm, which made his liability severe. He was found responsible for abuse of influence, intentional interference with employment, retaliatory conduct linked to the defamation. The court emphasized that reputation-based harm becomes exponentially worse when compounded by economic retaliation. His settlement included direct compensation for lost wages, housing disruption, and career harm, coverage of OP's job search and relocation costs, partial punitive damages to deter similar conduct. The money didn't give me back my wedding. It didn't undo the months of isolation. It didn't erase the whispers. But it did something important. It forced accountability. And it ensured that the lie, once loud and unchecked, ended permanently, on paper, under oath, and in the public record. After the settlements were finalized, Claire's official apology arrived. It was carefully drafted by her attorney, the kind of thing written to satisfy the court and protect her future more than to express genuine remorse. I apologize to OP for my actions related to her wedding and any distress caused. My statements were false and should never have been made. I recognize the harm they caused and accept the court's findings. I will not make further public statements regarding OP. I read it once, folded it neatly, and put it away. It felt hollow, but at least it was in writing. At last, the lie had a formal acknowledgement. The fallout for everyone involved was significant. Claire's social media credibility was destroyed. Friends and online communities who had once praised her for standing up for a friend now openly criticized her manipulations. Mark's reputation was irreparably damaged. The story had spread far beyond our small circles, and everyone who had once trusted him saw that he had knowingly humiliated me for his own convenience. Even his father's influence and favors were publicly questioned, leaving him isolated in his social and professional networks. As for me, the aftermath was quieter. Slowly, life began to rebuild itself around me. The settlements gave me stability, but more importantly, they gave me closure and control. I started hearing from people at my old church, apologies, explanations, people claiming I never should have doubted me. I didn't respond. Not once. I realized some damage was too deep to try to repair with words. Instead, I found a new church, one where I could rebuild my faith without whispers following me in every pew. It felt like a fresh start, even if the wounds lingered. Love, though, that felt impossible. I don't think I'll ever date again. The betrayal, humiliation, and trauma are too layered. Not because I'm incapable of love, but because my trust in anyone hasn't yet healed. Maybe someday, only time will tell. For now, I focus on myself. My faith. My family. My life rebuilt from the rubble. Standing here now, years later, I know this, the truth matters. Even when everyone doubts you. Even when the people you trusted betray you. Even when the world seems to move on without justice. I survived. I moved on. And, slowly, I learned that the only approval I ever truly needed was my own.